This is Thursday's Daf Samach. And says the Gemara, now the last thing we spoke about was that if you shechted an animal while the Mizbeach was incomplete, the animal is puzzled. But Abba says a similar thing, Mizbeach shenivgim, if the Mizbeach is incomplete, that part of it was defected, you cannot eat the carbon of carbon mincha. You cannot eat it because you need a Mizbeach upstanding, complete. And now, once we know that, we'll equate all other kabbalah. Remember, it says in the pasuk, the achlua, you should eat matzahs eitzel hamizbech. What do you mean eitzel hamizbech? Well, you have to sit next to the mizbech to eat the matzahs. If you eitzel hamizbech achlua, while the mizbech, you're leaning on the mizbech. While the mizbech is intact, is incomplete, you can eat it. Kachak, I know all kabbalas. If the mizbech is flawed, you cannot eat from it. And it says kodesh kadashim. So we're makish all kodesh kadashim. What about kachim kalim and What about Kachim Kalim? So Abaye will hold that Kachim Kalim, the same thing applies. But Abaye, ask him Midrasha de Rabbi Yossi. We're going to learn that from Rabbi Yossi Drasha. Now we'll bring Rabbi Yossi Drasha to teach you that even Kachim Kalim, the Mizbeach is not intact. You cannot eat it. You can't eat the shlamim and so on and so forth. The Tanya we learned, Rabbi Yossi says, Gimel Dvarim, three things. Mishum Gimel's Kainim. He said three different Kainim. The following is one of them. Rabbi Shmuel says, what happens if there's Bizman Hazeh, there's no Beis Hamikdash, and you have Ma'aser Sheni and you bring it to the Shalayim? Can you eat it in the Shalayim today when you have no? Can we say it says in the pasuk, don't eat it b'sharecha, eat it lifnei Hashem? When the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, is the Shalayim still called lifnei Hashem? There's long places there. And we have similar tastes in other places, in the other places, where tastes makes a difference is because there's machlekes in the Gemara and tastes. Don't be confused. I would agree. There's a difference when we have an argument if the Beis Hamikdash is butler, we'll see in a minute, right? Or in other words, the Beis Hamikdash still holy today, even though it's not standing. That's one thing. And there's another thing is whether Shalayim is still holy today, even though it's not standing. And another thing whether Yisrael it is still holy today. It's not linked to each other. You can hold the Beis Hamikdash still holy, but hold it Yisrael not holy. It's very important to know Yisrael is holy, not whether you chayv and trumas and ma'aser mahatayra or not chayv mahatayra. Because right here we're going to assume that you chayv and ma'aser sheni, and we're going to talk about whether it's lifnei Hashem. Well, if you chayv ma'aser sheni, that means you hold that Yisrael is still holy. So what's the question of lifnei Hashem? Must be there's no link between the two machlekes. Yisrael could be holy, you chayv ma'aser sheni, but the Beis Hamikdash is not there, so therefore the Shalayim doesn't have the din of lifnei Hashem. Where's the lifnei Hashem? There's no Beis Hamikdash. That's the question. So Rabbi Shmuel said, "Yochel." I would have thought, "Yalod the Ma'aser Shalayim." I would have thought that person could bring Ma'aser Shalayim b'yachlenu b'zman today. I thought you can eat it today. In other words, there is Ma'aser Sheni. Is there lifnei Hashem? The dinu, and it makes sense. The choy toun havos makom, a choy firstborn, you got to bring it to the Shalayim, the Beis Hamikdash, and umaiser ton havos makom, maiser also you got to bring it to the Shalayim. Ma b'choy eina el b'fnei habayis. B'choy you cannot eat today. No Beis Hamikdash. Af maiser eina el b'fnei habayis. So maiser knows b'choy is a given you cannot do today. That's a given. You can't be makif. And yet I still want to know whether it's called lifnei Hashem or not. And therefore, I'm going to say no because we're comparing Ma'aser to B'chayr. Is Av Ma'aser ain't no b'fnei habayis? Said the Gemara, what's going on? Who said you can compare Ma'aser to B'chayr? Boy, it needs more than just having a Beis Hamikdash. Mal b'chayr shekeitom matan domim. You have to sprinkle the blood. There's no mizbeach there. Even though it might be a holy place, but you still have to do the activity of matan domim. The emudim the gabi mizbeach. You don't have it, but maybe it's still holy. So maybe as far as Ma'aser is concerned, it still say lifnei Hashem. No, someone said no. Bikurim doesn't need a mizbeach, and yet we don't bring bikurim to either. Offering more, but bikurim also doesn't need a mizbeach. The Torah says clearly that you have to place it by the mizbeach, but you don't have a physical. It might be holy, but you can't do that activity, and that's the impediment. Mashiach, when it comes to ma'aser, it's still lifnei Hashem. It says in pasuk, you should bring over there, and this is the pasuk. It says your maisis and all that. Is the pasuk clearly makish ma'aser l'bchayr? The pasuk says bring over there your seichem. It's master seichem, and it says the bchayr is b'karchem etzonechem. So it compares ma'aser to bchayr. Ma b'chayr. So forget the memetzinu. It's a hekesh. Ma b'chayr ein el b'fnei habayis. You need av ma'aser ein b'fnei habayis. Freddy Gemara. What do I need a pasuk for? Okay, you want to live in b'chayr. You tell me that you can't live in b'chayr. You can't live in b'chayr. Then I bring b'kur. You tell me you can't live in b'chayr. So bring the two together. They both have different chumras. They don't share a chumrah, and yet Today you don't do it. So Meiser also you don't do today. What I need a hekesh for? What's the common denominator? So the Gemara you can ask, they both, I don't care if it's the same issue, but they both need a mizbech. They need a physical activity, other hanacha or sprinkling the blood. And Meiser doesn't have that. So therefore, you can't learn from those two. That's why we need a hekesh. Ready Gemara, Micah Saba. Let's understand Rabbi Shmuel. What is his opinion? If he holds kedusha to shine, in other words, it sounds like he's saying the Beis Hamikdash is holy, but because we have the mizbech, he can't do it. So it can't be both ways. If it's holy, we don't need a mizbech. It places. Remember, Shlomo Melech made the whole floor holy. What's he talking about? Ikasava kedusha to shine a kitchen l'shaita, a kitchen loss and love that it's not only holy then, but it's holy today. Then after b'choy nami, if he holds that after b'choy nami, you can be makiv today. You need it. Because the dinner you can be makiv today, even though Rava said before that you have to sprinkle his bed, but we proved that Rava has no proof for what he said. So you can be makiv b'chayr. And why did he say b'chayr you can't do it? Navas, he must say, he must say there's no base of Mikdash anymore, that's why he can't bring a b'chayr. No, so what's the lifnei Hashem? He's not the so why? And Navas, so ask the same question by b'chayr, just like asking by Maisa, is this still lifnei Hashem and all that? Ask the same question, it's the same thing. How? B'chayr, but you need zikas dam. Imagine a case, as we'll say, that the first Beis Hamikdash was upstanding. You sprinkle the blood, you did the emurim, and then you want to sit down to eat. You have the night and the rest of the day, and then suddenly Beis Hamikdash is destroyed. And you eat it now or not? I think you have other things on mind, and your mind that B'shas Ma'aseh, but can you eat it now or not? So ask the same question: can you eat the p'chayr while there's no mizbeach? This is going back to what Abaye said before, that even kachim kalim. Which is kachim kalim, if you cannot eat while there's no mizbech. So yeah, that's enough. Gemara continues. Amar Avina says, and that's about. Amar Avina says, la'olam kasava loikich. He holds that it's not holy. He says you sprinkle the blood already before. You sprinkle the blood and everything else, and now you have no longer a base of midrash. You know the mizbech, and therefore you cannot eat the p'chayr. And the boss is still kaim. And so why by b'choid is he for sure convinced that you don't eat it? My only question is Maisa. The iskish psare ledame. Mad dame requires a mizbech, just like the blood requires a mizbech. And besare b'mizbech, the boss also requires a mizbech. Now there's no way that Abaye is relying on Ravina because Ravina lived after Abaye. But the same word of Ravina was what Abaye was thinking, and this is what Abaye's raya is. Abchoy definitely he had no shaila whether you can eat or not because Abchoy, kachim kalim also require a mizbech to be intact, and because the mizbech was destroyed, you can't eat it. And then once we established that Abchoy you cannot eat it, so now therefore we're learning meiser from a hekesh Abchoy. What are you talking about? We learned before the chi double hekesh. How do you know that you're not allowed to eat the basar, you mekesh dam? And then you tell me how you know you're not allowed to eat ma'isa sheni because you compare it to b'chay. No, that's a hekesh and a hekesh. Everything more than ma'isa dagan chulun. We're trying to learn to ma'isa dagan. Ma'isa dagan remembers chulun, but remember ma'isa dagan is not the teacher; it's the student, it's the recipient. Says the Gemara. Is hard nichel. This makes sense according to that view which we had before. As well, that basar lamba does linen. That you look at the recipient, and therefore this is chulin. But chulin, you could have one hekesh teaching another hekesh. Elamanda basar malamba does linen. You look after the teacher. Well, the teacher's kachik is karbanis, but I'm comparing the basar of a b'chayr to the dam. Michael Memer. So the answer is not a hekesh. Dam basar chad milsi. It's not like we have one inyan of dam. An animal is made up of blood and flesh. It's the same thing. It's one thing. And therefore, dam needs a mizbech, so does basar. It's not a hekesh like two different things. It's one thing. Chad milsi is one thing. So this is Abaye's raya that kachim and kachim kalim mizbech is not attacked. You cannot eat it. The b'chayr you cannot eat. Says this is a famous word. The following: He saw the Gravim when Ravim went out to Israel. The most dangerous thing is to say something to Rabbi Yirmiyah in the name of people in Bavel. Because Rabbi Yirmiyah said the following, which he said a few times. He said, Bavloi tipshoy, the Bavloi mav tipshim. And he uses, could they eat bread with bread? Here he says, Amtul the Yossi. You know why? The Yossi ba'alech ha'shoicha. They sit in a dark place. They say things in Mechashcha that are dark. Didn't they hear? Hadatanya, the following. So Rabbi Yirmiyah, The time we learned, B'shasilik Masois. You have to picture this, the character of Rabbi Yirmiyah. And he was the one who's thrown out of yeshiva in the beginning of Abasa, brought back at the end of Abasa for his kinds of questions and the kind of description he has of people. He was a very bombastic, very bombastic. Time we learned. We have a state of two brises. We look at the brisa, b'shasilik masoyis. It says one brisa, when they were traveling in the midbar and they dismantled the mishkan, is kochim nifsalim, but they dismantled the mishkan. It was no longer mizbech. Everything was on the wagons that were going and traveling. Is kochim nifsalim. The kochim are possible. Sounds like why? Because there's no mizbech. The problem is there's no mizbech. You can't eat it. The zavim u'mitzorayim mishtalchin chutzul mechitza, but the kedusha was still there. So therefore, even though everything was dismantled, the kedusha was still there, and we sent away the zavim and the mitzayim. We sent away the zavim and mitzayim. The Tanya in another place, the shnei mekaymis in two places. Another place says, when the mishkan was dismantled, there were two places you could eat, kachin and cholin. What? Why if the mishkan was up near the mishkan, and if it was not up, anywhere you wanted? How can it be chastira? And there's only one possible answer. My love, ha b'kotche kochim, ha b'kotche kalim. Kotche kochim need a mizbech intact, upstanding. They couldn't eat it, and they couldn't eat it, and that was the first price. It's possible. And the second one is kochim kalim, and kochim kalim is you can eat anywhere you want. Of kasha labaya. Omar Rabbi Navina says, "Idi b'kochim kalim." No problem. They're both kochim kalim. So how come one place says you can eat like kasha? Rabbi Shmuel, this is what Abai said goes according to Rabbi Shmuel. Why? Rabbi Shmuel, who's the one who said all about b'chayres, learns basa from dam. It's all the same. And her Rabbanan. And the other one is the Rabbanan who don't agree with Rabbi Shmuel. And therefore they hold that Rabbi Shmuel said a b'chayr definitely you you cannot eat. Because Rabbi Shmuel hold that kachim kalim need a mizbech. But the Rabbanan argue and they hold that kachim kalim. They know that a kachim kalim can be eaten when there's no mizbech. I pass Rabbi Shmuel, no kasha. He buys him another.